I was an assistant football coach to Tom throughout the decade in the 80s. Just to tell you a little bit, Tom took on this assistant who was in his 20s, young kid. When you're that young, you think you know everything, right? So Tom, in his own special way, humbled me pretty quickly. So I can remember growing up a lot in those 10 years that I had the privilege to work with him. I can remember Friday nights, 7:30 game time. 7:30 right now, so it's pretty appropriate. It's game time. And after the games were over, we would all go over to the Kurth household. And I had 2 young kids at the time, and my wife and all our wives would sit together in the stands and either heard how good we were or how bad we were, right? We can all remember that. And so we'd go over to the house, and Coach Kurth always had pizza and Cokes for us. So so we would watch football tapes till probably around midnight. My 2 young kids would fall asleep, and I will say they grew up in the Kurth family room. So goes back a long way, and I'll tell you what, there are a lot of great memories and a lot of good times. And you're going to hear about those memories from the great speakers we have for you this evening. And I want to introduce Spencer Milkey, pastor, and he's going to lead us in an invocation.
Would you pray with me? In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Gracious Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for the life of your servant Tom, and for his dear bride, Barb. We thank you for all of the love you have poured into our lives and into our community through them. Tonight, Lord, as we remember them, we ask that you inspire us to live up to their example. We thank you for filling them above all with faith and love in you. For it's that faith and love that poured that love then into us. We thank you for the redemption that you have given to them in your Son, Jesus. May that now comfort us, their family, and all who love them. We ask this all in the name of Jesus. Amen.
I'd like to introduce a 77 graduate, our mayor, Rod Robertson, and former Blazer.
Well, these are some of the, we've been blessed with some good times in this space, and I think Frank was absolutely right. It couldn't be more appropriate for us to be where we are right now. My first memories of this field was probably when I was about 9 or 10 years old, and I used to watch from the fence over there some of the guys behind me just wanting my chance to play on this field. And I remember one day Coach Kurth threw me a ball and told me to take it home. I guess he thought I was going to be a quarterback. And he said, just throw it around and hold on to it. But when he did it, it was special because of who it was and the fact that he saw me, a 10-year-old, wanting with eyes big to play on this field. So these times could be more appropriate and more poignant. I have the humble and gracious responsibility of being your mayor, but even more so, I have the humble and gracious responsibility of being a member of this community who grew up and got to know very, very closely the man that we are celebrating here tonight. The family I grew up with, we were in school together. Some of these guys back here I grew up with, but most of them are older than I am. I couldn't help but get a shot in every so often. But what resonated when I heard about Coach passing was something that was almost something I couldn't capture and I can't capture right now in emotions that went through me. I had people obviously calling, knowing that I had played, but I had to bring myself together in order to be able to speak to them in terms of how I felt. And it hasn't gotten any better, but one thing's for sure, I got a distinct understanding of what he left all of us with. Just through the outpouring of comments that are made everywhere, and people who have called, and I'm sure have called the family and left texts and social media posts and all of those things that speak so highly of Coach Kurth. I always thought that he was bigger than this football field. I always thought he was bigger than a coach. The first time I got a chance to spend some time with him was in driver's ed. Some of y'all went through that 2-break system, right? And he talked to me like a player that I was going to be when I was in driver's ed. So he always projected to me something that I wasn't yet. It's almost he talked you into the future. He kind of displayed a sense of, I know you're going to be a great person, a great man, a great father. I just want you to understand how to get there. So the things that I listened to him while I was driving, as anxious and nervous as I was, were things that really turned out to be true as I became a man. How to understand how to respect the drivers on the road. How to understand defensive driving as it relates to the kind of respect that you needed to have with a vehicle that was so big and could go so fast. But what you can do with it, its maneuverability, its ability to do the things necessary that was metaphoric for what we would do in sport. So I won't go through a lifelong trail of experiences that I had with Coach, and I'm sure that the guys behind me will be doing some of that. But what I wanted to do was both as mayor and as a father, because every time I had a kid, I wanted to make sure that he knew who Coach Kurth was. I moved back home in '97 after being 20 years away because I wanted my son to play for Coach Kurth, my oldest son. And there are some experiences that he had, but only for Coach Kurth. But my daughter actually posted something unbeknownst to me that I wanted to read to you. And she is 22, didn't play for Coach, only knew him through myself and my brother, my two brothers, Warren and Garvin, and then her brothers, Chris and Rannon, and then my wife, Regina, who actually was coached by Coach as well as she played track. And actually, he coached her as a cheerleader. She said he told her some things that she was doing as a cheerleader that she shouldn't have been doing. And I still don't think cheerleading is a sport, but I'm going to get in trouble for that. Yeah, I know I'm going to get in trouble for it. Yeah, this one hurt bad. not because it's just my pain, but the pain of a city. Not everyone has the ability to touch so many lives across generations in the most gracious and humble way. From the stories my dad, uncles, and brothers would tell me, every interaction I ever had, and from the reaction of the community, you can tell he had the special heart that never stopped pouring into others. Coach Kurth, thank you for being more than a coach, but a father figure and a light to all youth. The true definition of a legend. Once a blazer, always a blazer. Rest in peace. Now, that was from a 22-year-old who is still playing a little volleyball, but when she met Coach, she sat with her eyes as big as my eyes were when I was standing outside of that field, listening to her or listening to him breathe life into her as if it was the future that she was getting ready to go into. And so I had no idea that I was ever going to be mayor. When I was playing football for him or talking to him through my days at Northwestern or even through my days working professionally. But for some reason, every time you sat with him, you thought you were going to be better and bigger than who you were. And that's why I knew sport transcends who we are in life. So who we are as a community is embodied. Who we are as a city is embodied in the things that this man stood for. And so I was trying to get this to him before he passed. But obviously I didn't make it. But this is the second key to the city that I've given. And it says on it, Coach, you brought your best. You changed our lives. You strengthened our families. You defined the heart of Elkhart. And I just want to make sure that I give this to I don't know which one of y'all I should give it to, but I'll give it to one of y'all. She's the oldest. And I'm going to sit down. But before I do, there was an article in the paper, and Coach Sharp from Jimtown made one statement that made me think that that's probably how I should leave this discussion. And that statement that he made, well, the last part of that article, if you had a chance to read it, if you're not true folk, it captured what I thought was what I felt about Coach. And excuse me, my fingers are a little big. Everyone in Elkhart knew and loved Tom Kurth. And he loved the city back. He was just a great man that happened to coach football. And I think that's probably says what we all would like to be. We're not defined by what we do. We're defined by who we are. And that's the kind of man this man was.
We have a 67 graduate from Elkhart High School, Tom Kahn, former coach at Concord High School. Tom.
Good evening. It sure turned out a lot better than it was going to earlier. Although I did look at the weather report earlier, it was 89 degrees with a heat index of about 93. I thought, boy, Kurth would love this today. He'd work us real hard and make us sweat real hard, too. So, looks a little better than it did. Thanks for coming. This is great to see everybody here, honoring him, sharing memories, honoring and giving thanks for the life of Tom Kurth, which we all have so much to be thankful for. And we're better to celebrate it than right here at this venue. I mean, you look and my heart still sees him walking up and down these sidelines. And we all know that the building over there was his second home. And quite honestly, if Barb were here, she'd probably tell us that was his first home. But it's beautiful. And I got to say, 55 years ago, almost to the day, is when Coach Kurth came to Elkhart, was hired. I believe it was August 12th, 1966, same year I was born. And I was fortunate, very blessed to play on his first team. And it was a challenge for him. And if anybody could overcome adversity, it was always him. And he would teach us just that. I'm going to tell you some of the things he was up against when he took this job. The obstacles. First of all, he got hired, as I mentioned, on August 12th. Football started on August 15th. That doesn't give you much time. He didn't know any of the players, hadn't met any of us, didn't know any of the coaches. He didn't even have an opportunity to look at his equipment yet or assign equipment to us. He had to do all that within 3 days. In the meantime, he had to make a trip back to Griffith to get his family ready to make this move. Now, they had just built a brand new home that they hadn't even had a chance to live in yet. So he had to come back and be ready to start football. And Barb, being a wonderful wife that she was home with Christy. And Frank came with Tom and lived here. And I might add that during the time that they came here and lived, waiting to try to find a home in Elkhart and sell one in Griffith, they lived, and I'm sure most of you remember this, there was a motel at the corner of Jackson and Johnson Street. That's where they lived. How long, Frank?
The month of August, I think.
Yeah, probably that whole month. And so they went through a lot of adversity, and it was very tough. With all this, and by the way, Mrs. Kurth was also ready to give birth to their third child. So they had a lot going on. But with all that adversity, he somehow managed to still get here, meet most of us, and get the gear passed out. But just to throw one more curveball in there, on the first day of practice, we were on the field practicing, and all of a sudden the manager came out like chicken licking, yelling, "The roof fell in, the roof fell in." And there was smoke coming out of the windows everywhere. And sure enough, the roof had caved in. So here he had to deal with that too. He had to move us all out of the field house, find a new place to dress and get ready for practices and games. But he handled it with class. Adversity never bothered him. And those are the things that he showed us to carry on with. He had a very special way of encouraging people, making them believe in themselves that they could do things, and making them stick by him. He could also evaluate talent very well. And to be honest, we had our first 4 games, people starting out of position. He didn't have any opportunity to evaluate us. We lost 3 out of our first 4 games. It would have been real easy to quit and not want to play for him, blame it on him or whatever. But everybody loved him. And if anything, they wanted to prove it to him that we could win. And he kept everybody together. And we weren't a great team, but we ended up winning the next 5 out of 6 games. And it was because of him and his leadership. So we were really thankful for that. As was mentioned earlier, we could talk about his coaching resume. It's phenomenal. Championships, awards, you name it. But again, I would rather talk about the things that he's done. He has built so many men. Notre Dame has a thing that they call 4 and 40. When they go there, they stress the fact you're going to be there for 4 years, but you're going to be prepared for the next 40. I believe that was really started under Tom Kurth, because that's what he did. He taught you in 4 years and prepared you for the next 40 years and beyond in your life. Those are the kind of things he'll be remembered for the most. Wore a lot of hats. He was a father, first of all at home, raised an incredible family. And then he was a father to a lot of players, a lot of kids in the school and community. And he was also a psychiatrist, a counselor, you name it. He'd get phone calls at all hours of the night from kids, need help. And he was always right there for them. So, pretty phenomenal. I mentioned earlier that he came here 55 years ago. And I just want to say, there's an old saying that goes something like this: grow where you're planted. And that was definitely true with him. He grew where he's planted. 55 years ago, God planted him here. And he not only grew it during that time, but he also helped hundreds of young people grow. And that's what he'll be remembered for, those kind of things. He was just a great leader, as I mentioned earlier, and just had the ability to do so many things. What I want to say to close is we were fortunate to have him planted here in this town. And because of that, so many other people were able to grow. And I know on Wednesday, when it came his time to go home, he was greeted in heaven by God with a handshake and welcome home, coach. Job well done. So I'm thankful for him. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce a 67 graduate, Fred Lance, former Blazer, assistant track coach, and a state track champion from the Blazers. Mr. Lance.
Looking around, I think I'm the only non-football player here. Got the guns to show it, baby. Look here. Anyway, I want to talk a little remembrance here. Frank has probably heard some stories of mine before, but I want to talk about coaching track. In his first year here, came from Griffith, and I didn't know he was going to be an assistant coach until it actually happened in the spring. And right away, working out in the spring of '67, my senior year, I got a bad leg injury, and I had to be not run for 3-4 weeks. And so during that time, I'm sweating bullets because I'd finished second in the state in the mile as a junior, finished second in the state as senior in cross country, but I hadn't won the state. So time's running out. And so all I could do is come down to this track, watch people work out. So one day I came here and found out that coach had called his dad, who was the head coach for track and cross country at Hobart. In fact, won the state championship in cross country. Good coach. Coach came from good stock. So in any case, he talked to his dad and said, "Hey, what am I going to do with this kid? I mean, time's running out. We don't have a lot of time left. What can I do with him? He can't run." And his dad said, "Put him on a bike." Put him on a bike. He did. I came here one day and I saw this bicycle down at this end of the field. And who's got that bike? Who's riding here today? Went down and he says, Fred, come here. He says, listen, I want you to get on that bike, stay on this outside lane here. This was a cinder track back then. You could move around here pretty good on a bicycle on this track. Cinder track, not so good. So anyway, he says, you just take off and ride. And I'm thinking, my man, this is a piece of cake, no sweat. So as I go around the first lap. Around the first lap, he goes, pick it up, Lance, let's go. Stop slouching. So I go, okay, I picked it up, I think I'm going to please him this time. Come around and I said, pick it up. So I go, oh, what? Now I'm hitting it all I can do, So lap after lap, I'm going through this. I haven't worked out in about 4 weeks. I'm getting sick. He finally says, okay, Lance, you're done. I got off of that bike and I stumble around. And I said, oh, Lord, I'm glad it's over, So I had that whole week, I did that same thing because I couldn't run, right? But we're not going to run this week. We're going to do this. So I got some cardiovascular work, no problem with that. The following week was even a better story for you, I think, because I am on the track first time in weeks. And he's with Coach's style, he never told you what the total workout was going to be. He said, you're not going to pace yourself on me. So he would say, okay, everybody line up. In this case, that particular night, we're on the back stretch over here, and we're going to repeat 400s, or at least one 400, because that's what you were told. So we all take off. I hadn't ran, but I stayed with the guys. It's okay. He never told you how much rest time you were going to get, but he said it was timed. So before you would do anything else, he would give you a warning. 30 seconds, 15 seconds. Come on, guys, to the line. You have to line. Okay, we're going to do another 400. 65 seconds. Go. Do it again. So this goes on for a while. I'm doing okay for the first about 4 or 5 quarters. Get done with the next one, and I go, I just got to go throw up. So I'm on the back stretch over here, and I just go over to the fence, and I start heaving, And pretty soon, he just lets me go on. He goes, 30 seconds, Lance. And he goes, 15 seconds, Lance. To the starting line. So I come up, I'm wiping all off. Go. Here we go. Go around the track again. Now, I'm not doing 65 seconds because I can't, but I go around the track as fast as I can. Get done with that, same thing. I go over the fence. I'm heaving. He goes, okay, same thing. Get to the back start line. Next time we go, I'm really, really hurt. We get done with that one. Instead of just going over to the fence, I'm crawling along the fence line, throwing up on all fours. I'm thinking, thank God this thing is over. I hear 30 seconds, Lance. 15 seconds, Lance. I get back up. I made it around the lap. Not very quick, but I made it. Went back over and started heaving again. He comes over, crawling and heaving. He comes over and told me, he says, good job, Lance. We'll be back at it again tomorrow. Can't wait. But to make a long story short, that was the worst it got. The next week, I ran my first race all season. I finished second to a teammate of mine. So the last time I was beat all year. Came back and won the conference, set a conference record. Won the sectional record. Regionals, set a regional record. Won the state, which I wanted so bad, and set a state record. So that's the man. That's the man that can drive you. He drove me. Made me what I am. Thanks.
We have a 69 graduate, Clyde Riley, Ball State, and an Elkhart Community School administrator for a number of years. Clyde?
Thank you, Frank. it's a privilege and an honor to be here to speak on behalf of Coach Kurth and to celebrate what a wonderful person he is and was. I know I speak for some of my classmates that I see in the stands up here, Dave Walker, A.J. Rodino, Tim Pletcher. We're just a few. We had over 100 players on the team. We had an army. We warmed up. We won most of our games through warm-ups. People would come out there and see us warming up. It would be over. I didn't have the honor of playing for Coach Kurth in his first couple of years here, even though I was a student here and enrolled and participated in basketball and track. Coach Kurth, I had the honor of meeting him through the late Robert Taylor and the late Marshall McCullough. They were phenomenal athletes and pretty scary guys, too. I mean, you got guys that play football now. Those guys were scary rough. And Coach Kurth recruited me. He said, Clyde, you're the missing link we need for our defense. We need you for defensive end. So finally, with the encouragement of Robert Taylor and Marshall McCullough, I came out for the football team. And we had some really tough practices. See, we were all good friends in the community. So when we were at practice, we took everything serious at practice. So we were going to sack a quarterback. We weren't going to let anybody score on us. And we had some individual self-confidence going. Well, we noticed some things that were different in the Elkhart football scheme that we didn't like. You see, I played for Hawthorne Elementary and Pyramid Middle School. We never lost a football game. I wasn't used to losing any football games. So when we started playing for Elkhart, we wanted to make some changes to that. So I remember our defense was a pretty good defense. We had speed, we had size, we had athletic ability, and we had everything we needed to make a great defense. And then we had what we called the fearsome fivesome. That was our defensive line. I played along with Marshall McCullough, Robert Taylor, Jimmy Holliday, and Tom Wilkerson. And let me tell you, there were 7 schools that did not score on us during the football year. And we only allowed a little over 30 points. I think it was 33 points. And half of those were in the first game against LaPorte, where we won 19-16, I believe. We were just a tough group of kids, and Tom Kurth made us. He was our individual football coach during practice. Tom Kurth was the defensive line coach. And he would say, have no mercy on him. Sack the quarterback. I learned my principles of defensive line that I took all with me throughout my college career. Anyway, I had the distinct honor of playing for Coach Kurth, and he taught me many things about life and about football. He stayed with me the whole time when I went to college. He was an advocate for me going to college, and I was the only one in my family that went to college for 4 years. So Coach Kurth said, you have a lot of possibility. You're going to do great things. You have to work hard. So he got me engaged, and that's probably all he needed to do, and I started doing that. And I went on to Ball State University, where I led it for 3 years, captain of the football team, and to this day, only 3 athletes in the history of Ball State who participated in 3 varsity sports. Schaefer Suggs, Tim Brown, and Clyde Riley. That's it from Ball State. I learned my workmanship from him, and after I got out of school, I came back to the Elkhart Community Schools, which I wanted to come home. And Coach Kurth was my mentor. my father figure, and my colleague. So, they say the greatest among you shall be your servant. He served the Elkhart community. He served the Elkhart Community Schools, and he served mankind. His legacy will live on. 30 years after I played, my son Justin played for him as well. And he took Justin over to the field house one day and he said, "There's your dad's picture. You need to be with your dad." So it means a lot to me, and I'm ever grateful for him as a person. I did remember one thing that I've learned from him, how you need to stick to it. So the poem I use in school and college to get me through and help me, it's called See It Through. When you're up against the trouble, meet it squarely, face to face. Lift your chin, set your shoulders, plant your feet, take a brace. When it's vain to try to dodge it, do the best that you can do. You may fail, but you may conquer, see it through. Black may be the clouds about you, and your future may seem grim, but don't let your nerves desert you. Keep yourself in fighting trim. If the worst is bound to happen, in spite of all you can do, running from it will not save you. See it through. Even hope may seem but futile, when with troubles you're beset. But remember, you are doing what other blazers have already met. You may fail, but do not fall and give up. Keep your eyes high to the finish. See it through. Thank you.
We're getting younger now. We have a 71 grad, 71 Blazer, Ball State, played then at the New York Jets, Schaefer Suggs.
Good evening. He knows all the football players have notes. Wow. Thank you, Chrissy, Frank, Karen, for inviting me to just say a few words on this night of celebration for Coach Kurth. He was an amazing man. I really didn't struggle with the words today. What I struggled with was the emotion of being able to articulate them in a way that represented what this great man meant to Schaefer Suggs and the impact that he had on my life. He was a man who was dedicated his life to reaching into the soul of every person he met. And when you walked away from him, you knew the importance of brotherhood, not just in sports, but in life. My dream of playing for Coach Kurth started right there up on that hill, right at school. That's where I watched my first game, sitting on the hood of my parents' car. Our first personal experience playing for the coach I dreamed about playing for was in driver's ed. I was scared to death. I remember getting in the car. I was very nervous. And when it was my time to drive, the topic of, Schaefer, are you going to go out for the sophomore football team? Now you have to remember, with me, those who know me well, I just sustained 2 really bad knee injuries. I was about 125 pounds, dripping wet. I had lost my confidence and told Coach Kurth, Coach, I think I'm just going to play basketball. Wrong answer. He said, pull the car over. I said, what? He said, pull the car over. You are going to flunk driver's ed if you don't play football. He loves telling that story. But soon after that, I remember the inspiration because I needed that. I was going through a really difficult time. I needed someone to lift me up, and he did that. He inspired me. Like he inspired so many of us. He said, Shape, you're going to be a great football player sometime, but you have to want to be a great football player. Over this last week, it really warms my heart. I got a chance to watch some of the interviews, listen to former players. They talked about his legacy. I also want to add some words regarding his legacy because we talked often, at least once a week. And I remember one of our favorite movies was Remember the Titans. He said, Schaefer, they should have called it Remember the Blazers. And our favorite part that resonates when Coach Boone, played by Denzel Washington, during training camp, he woke his players up in the middle of the night and ran them to the Battle of Gettysburg. We love this. If we don't come together right now on this hallowed ground, we too will be destroyed. Just like they were, I don't care if you like each other or not, but you respect each other. And maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll learn to play like men. I learned how to play football like a man under Coach Kurth. The reason that movie resonates, we talked about this, because the backdrop, that movie was our movie. In 1971, it was the week that we were playing the Richmond Spiders. Coach Kurth knew in order for us to win the state championship, we had to beat a team from the South. One year we played Indianapolis Cathedral. It didn't go well for them, 54-0. And that year we were playing Richmond. But that was a really difficult week in Elkhart schools because there were the riots. And we talked about that this year because of what our past year was like. And I remember he shared this with me for the first time. He said the principal purposely got us out of school on Thursday, got us on a bus, and drove us down to Richmond. Now that drive down to Richmond was very similar to that run to Gettysburg. Because during that time, Coach Kurth, not in the same words, same meaning, said we need to come together. Black players, white players, we're not going to win if we come together. And then he paused. He said, no, wait, we need to come together for this city. We need to be an example for this city. We need to win this game for this city. And we beat Richmond. And really nice, I see some of my former players, I see Mike Stock, I see Malcolm, I see Carl Macon, he's over there hiding. But we stayed in Earlham College overnight. And that was the opportunity for us to really come together. That game was probably the most important game of my life. So most of you know the story about me wanting to be a quarterback. Coach Kurth called me after about 2 weeks of practice and said, we're going to switch you to defensive back, and if that doesn't work out, I'm going to cut you from the team. So I was playing defensive back. We're about 2 quarters into the game. Now, I didn't start my junior year. I played on special teams, goal line, kickoff. And I think it was the second quarter, maybe the third quarter. Schaefer sucks. Get in the game. I froze. But I went in the game, played safety. And Richmond knew that they had somebody new playing safety. And they threw a post pattern. And I went up and I got it. I went to the sideline. The first person who greeted me was Coach Kurth. He said, "Son, I believe in you. You just need to believe in yourself." He believed in me. I learned from him. We learned from him. He taught us acceptance. If you've been around Coach Kurth, there was energy. He was a zealous person. One thing that he did not tolerate was lack of effort. He said, you can't coach effort. 110% effort. And the most important was respect. I learned a lot about respect. B, believe. L, learn. A, acceptance. Z, zealous. E, effort. R, respect. Spells blazer. He was the ultimate blazer. Before I close, I want to tell one of my 1 million stories about Coach Kurth. In 1976 in April, draft day. Sitting in my apartment at Ball State, because we didn't have the hoopla back in those days. I was sitting in my apartment at Ball State waiting by the phone. I get the call that I was drafted by the New York Jets in the second round, 33rd pick. And the first person I called was my mom. And I'm probably a minute into it. I'm excited. She said, "Did you call Coach Kurth?" She said, "Ma, I'll call him. And I got off the phone and I called Coach Kurth. And we were both almost in tears. And before he hung up, he said, "Aren't you glad I didn't flunk you?" The driver's ed. Oh, Chrissy, Frank, Kurth family, Karen. I know he's smiling down tonight with your mom's loving embrace, because I know how much he missed her. I also know my mom has given him a huge hug for loving me and loving my family for all these years. Truly great coach is hard to find, difficult to part with, impossible to forget. Love you, Coach. Hey.
Our next speaker is a 74 grad, went to the University of Alabama, and played for the Green Bay Packers, Rich Wingo.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for asking me to speak. What an honor. And I look around at you guys, and you're like I am. Coach Kurth changed my life. And I have a feeling that those that are here tonight, you're here because Coach Kurth changed your life as well. His impact and his influence is forever reaching. This is sitting here listening to these testimonies is phenomenal. In the 60s and the 70s, like Clyde was talking about in Schaefer, this place was a powerhouse for athletics, and football led the way, and Coach Kurth was the one leading that charge. And everybody wanted to play for Coach Kurth. When I was a kid, if you can believe that, when I was a kid, I would sit in my kitchen on the south side of Elkhart and listen to a transistor radio of the games with the Elkhart Blue Blazers, who they were playing, Michigan City, Indiana. It was awesome. And I dreamed one day that I want to play for this man called Tom Kurth. That was my dream. That was everybody's dream on the south side. And this place was, this field was sacred. And Coach Kurth made it sacred. He made it special. And he had this spirit of excellence. And everything that Coach did on that practice field, on this field, in that locker room, in those halls, in that classroom, Coach Kurth demanded a spirit of excellence. And he got it. He cared about how you dressed. He cared about how you carried yourself. He cared about how you treated people. He cared about how you studied, how you prepared. He cared. I've been blessed over the years. I've had the opportunity of playing for some great head coaches. Paul Bryant, Bart Starr, Forrest Gregg, people that Super Bowl champions, MVP of Super Bowls, national champions. But I can tell you from the bottom of my heart, there's been no greater coach that had any greater impact than Tom Kurth in my life. He changed my life. We were talking, Frank and I were talking, and he was the world's greatest encourager. It was about the third week of two-a-days, and it was on the back door of that field house over there, and he sent somebody to come get me. I didn't know that he knew my name. I was a sophomore, little skinny kid. Schaefer and Mike were the big studs, and I was just this snot-nosed skinny kid. And Coach Kurth sent for me, and he said Coach Kurth wants to see you. I'm thinking he's going to cut me because we had hundreds of players out here. I'm thinking I am gone, and I go up to his office in that corner. And scared to death. And he opens the door and he sits down. He sits me down and he begins to talk to me and he tells me, and he calls me Rich. He knew my name, and I couldn't believe he knew my name. And he said, Rich, listen, I want you to know that I've been watching you. And he said the same thing he said to Schaefer. He said, I believe in you. That was the first time a man had ever said that to me. He believed in me. He said, Rich, he said, if you're willing to pay the price, if you're willing to sacrifice and dedicate yourself, he goes, and put the work in that it's going to take, he goes, you have potential. You have a chance to do something. Guys, that changed my life, the rest of my life. There was a pair of game pants and game socks and blazer bolts right there on the bench. He said, Rich, he goes, this Friday night, he said, you're going to dress out with the varsity. I mean, my head's about to explode. He goes, and when you put those pants on, and Clyde, he talked about you, and he talked about Marshall McCullough, and he started pulling all these names out of the past. He goes, son, when you put those blazer bolts on that helmet, when you put those pants on, when you put that jersey on, you're representing Marshall McCullough, Clyde Riley. And he starts pulling these names out, and you conduct yourself like a champion. And he's calling the champion out in you and challenging you. And then he said, now listen, you're not going to play Friday night. You're not even. He said, he did. He said, you're not going to play, but you're going to get to warm up. I said, hey, that's all right. I'm good. It didn't take a whole lot for me. Coach Kurth called the champion out in me, and he called the champion out in every man. I love Coach Kurth. This is hard. I used to call that press box on Friday nights from Green Bay because once a Blazer, always a Blazer. Thank you.
All right, I think we have a 79 graduate, but it's debatable, I really think he's older than that. But Dave Thomas, former Blazer and a quarterback for the Blazer team.
I have no idea why I'm up here. Holy cow, look at these guys. This is unbelievable. Rich Wingo, Schaefer Suggs, Mike Stock is up in the stands. Look at these athletes. You're probably asking yourself the same thing. What is he doing up there? Well, I've known the Kurth family since probably 1970 or 71. And I had a similar experience to every one of them. Except when I came here for the first time, it was probably to watch Mike or Schaefer. And I stood outside that fence because you couldn't get in. You couldn't get in on the home team. You couldn't get in on the visitor side. This place was packed, and we all know why. But my experience starts with Coach on the football field. It's 1977, and I was standing on these same sidelines to explain to Coach why I had just thrown my second interception against, of all teams, South Bend LaSalle. And it was one of those interceptions that only a very inexperienced backup quarterback could throw. It was a dreaded sideline pass that did not have a lot of velocity on it. It was as slow as your grandmother walking across the street. And for those of you that really don't get how slow it is, if Dave Schnell threw bullets, and he did, I threw balloons. And here's what happens after that. I get off the sideline. I'm sure, by the way, the defensive back sent me a thank you card after he crossed over the end zone line. But I get off the sideline, and I got the dreaded trifecta of the Kurth disgust. And Frank might remember this, right? Frank, you even knew I could throw balloons. Curtis has got to be up here. There he is right there. So I came off the sideline, and I got this. You never wanted this. You never wanted the hands to go up. That was the first thing. The second thing, you never wanted his hand to go through his hair. And the last thing was the crossed arms. Well, I got all three. I got the throwing up, hands, crossed arms, then he looked at me. He looked at me. He only looked at me. He may have said my name 3 times, and by the way, Rich, he did know everybody's first name. He might have gone, David, David, and then the David, and you knew where you were in trouble. And that was it. That was it. I felt so bad. I had to walk back from the throwing this interception. It's like the walk of shame after you throw a gutter ball, and you have to come back to your family. That's the way I felt. I felt like I was walking down the hallway, and I was trying to avoid a teacher or my 7th grade girlfriend. You just wanted to walk the other way. And literally, Coach didn't say anything to me. And that's kind of the way he was. It's one of those times where I didn't want to hear it, and he didn't say anything. He gave me what I needed at that moment, and that was silence. And Coach had a great way of putting you in a position to make you shrink so you could grow. And that was a moment for me to shrink so I could grow. And it must have worked because a year later, I did make the All-State, All-Conference team and the All-State football team. And it was for punting that I made it. But now wait a minute. Now wait. Coach said punters are football players too. Now I'm not sure, but well, that's what he said anyhow. Here's what I really liked about Coach in that circumstance. I think a lot of coaches would do the typical thing. What are you doing? What are you thinking? You got to be kidding me. You got to be mentally tough in this sport. And how many times have we heard that? But Coach didn't do that. In fact, a lot of coaches would cuss. I never heard Tom Kurth say a curse word. How many football players are sitting here today besides me? Did you ever hear Coach Kurth cuss? Any of you? Never. He never used a cuss word. And you know why? Because his instincts and his upbringing and everything about him in his core told him that that was not the right thing to do. And I've tried to emulate that. Tried. And it's hard to get to that point where Coach was. So why did I share that story with you? Mainly because everything you know about Coach Kurth has been said, and I can't add to it, and I can't take away from it. I'm going to let others assume that responsibility. We all know his character, his accomplishments, and his accolades. He's received many. He's a Hall of Famer and a state champion. Not that I can't share more with you or that I don't want to share them. It's just with these few minutes I want to tell you who I really think he was. Let me say first, Tom Kurth was a Renaissance man. Yes, he was a Renaissance man. A Renaissance man means the center of the universe, limitless in his capacities for development, and led to the notion that men should try to embrace all knowledge and develop their own capacities as fully as possible. Someone who gives his best effort in every endeavor. Well, even the name Kurth, and I looked it up, means refined and accomplished. And although a Renaissance man, and I do mean a Renaissance man, there was something missing during his Renaissance. The art of properly outfitting your team with football equipment. And anybody who plays for them knows what I'm about to say. He was the chief cook and bottle washer, right, Frank? He did everything. Today, most coaches get 10 or 15 guys. Tom Kurth did everything. When you got outfitted, Tom Kurth outfitted you. When I walked in to get fitted for the first time, I could hardly wait. He asked me, "What size are you?" How the heck do I know what kind of size I am? I'm 5'9", 150 pounds. He goes, "Well, you're going to come out of here today 6 foot, 175. Because by God, he wasn't going to have a guy that short and that wimpy on his team. And I came out of there, my shoulder pads were this big, my helmet, I think I was wearing Tom Eastman's helmet. I'm not sure. And if you knew Tom Eastman, man, he had a bucket head. I hope Tom didn't hear that. He's not here. So, but it didn't matter. Guess what uniform I was wearing? Blue blazer, right, Rich? And boy, was that a proud moment for me. And I really meant what I said about Tom Kurth being a Renaissance man. He truly was. And I think what made it happen for him was his wife, Barbara. She was an accomplished teacher as well of 35 years and had a very similar calling as Coach Tom Kurth. Everything he did with her at his side. Every speech I ever heard him make, he always mentioned his wife warmly. He gave credit where credit was due. And what was ironic to me is that when I looked up the meaning of Kurth, I also looked up the meaning of Barbara. Barbara generally means traveler, but Saint Barbara was the protectress against fire and lightning. I hope the irony is not lost because she married a man who was a blazer riding the lightning. Nothing meant more to Tom than his wife and kids and his grandkids. When she passed away last December after having been married a mere 63 years, I called him to see how he was doing. I can't tell you how heartbroken he was. I've heard men cry over losing a spouse, but he wept. He truly wept. Now, after a few minutes of talking about his wife and how difficult it was for him to go on, I asked him, and I don't know why I did this. I said, "Coach, do you want to live?" And he paused, because as shocked as I was that I asked him, I think he was shocked that I asked him as well. And he said, "David, I want to live more than anything." I asked why, and he said, "For Barb, for the kids, and the grandkids." All he could talk about was the love of his wife, his children, and his grandchildren. And he told me the thought of his wife dying is tough, but the thought of leaving his children and his grandchildren behind was unbearable. We spoke about family, friends, the old days, all of you, the schools he worked with, the people he encountered. It was amazing. My only regret is that I didn't record it. I truly mean that. So for me, in that moment, I found clarity. He found clarity in the mortality he was dealing with. I found clarity in the life, in my own life. I learned that the accomplishments and accolades are important, but that the relationship with family and friends are far more meaningful. I learned why this man was so valuable and beloved by many of you. It was because he valued and loved so many of us. Each of the people he encountered in his life, I guarantee you, he valued more than he valued himself. He tried to see that every person he encountered was able to achieve his or her God-given gifts. I've known men like Tom Kurth, and he is one of those people who generally believed that life is a gift from God. We hear that a lot, but he actually believed it. He loved life. He ate it up. He squeezed as much as he could out of it, and he accepted the gift of each of you by giving so much back. All we have to do is look around here today. We all came here because we wanted to give something back or to recognize the life well lived and wish that in some way we are or could be like him. Now, for the family, I'm sure the last few months of his life, with all that you've been enduring with the loss of your mom, have been extremely difficult. He may not have seemed like that Renaissance man or that gift I just described, but he was. He just didn't want to let go of the gift of life, or any of you. Believe me, losing a father like your father is horribly difficult when you love that deeply, especially with a person with that much presence. He was a powerful man. So in closing, I'd like to first thank the Kurth family for granting me this honor to speak this evening. I would like to personally say to Christy and Steve, Frank and Denise, Karen and Bill, how much I loved your dad. Thank you for the privilege of growing up around you, especially you, Frank. You guys are a one-of-a-kind family. And for everybody else here, he's not gone. Coach Kurth isn't gone. He's right here. He's right here in Rice Field. I can feel him. He's in the bleachers. He's in the press box. He's in the concessions. He's on this track. He's in the locker room. But he's especially sitting right there. I can feel him. He's going to be here forever. History will never forget this man. This is the Kurth complex. That's the Kurth Fieldhouse. His name will live on forever, and he's always going to be chanting those words. Once a Blazer, always a Blazer. Thank you.
Our next speaker is an 88 grad, linebacker for the Blazers, played at Indiana State, was an administrator with Elkhart Community Schools, and now is the president of our Elkhart Chamber of Commerce, LaVon Johnson.
Once I found out what the order of speaking was going to be, I said to Daryl Higgins, I don't want to follow Dave Thomas. So let me start here. All day today, I've been trying to figure out how to channel Coach Kurth. And so I got to let you know, when I decided what I was going to wear today, I wore the Coach Kurth special occasion outfit. Gray pants, some sort of shirt that has blue in it, black shoes, and of course you top it off with a blue blazer. And for the hour before I got here, and the family will understand this, there was nothing blasting on my radio except for Neil Diamond. So I tell all of you that Frank told me I have 3 to 5 minutes to speak. You got no chance. Just to follow up on what Dave said, I do want to thank the family, not for inviting me to speak. I appreciate that very much. But I want to thank you on behalf of everybody that's here, every student that ever had your dad, every student that took his time after school, before school, during the summer. We have to thank you because you shared your dad with us in ways that are absolutely unbelievable. This family has sacrificed time with their father, but they knew what his mission was. They knew what he was doing. He knew his passion. And as I got into coaching, when I took the coaching job, coach sat me down. At first, he called me crazy. But the first thing he talked about, he says, "Are you sure you want to do this? You've got a young family, and you're going to be away from them a lot. And he knew that because I spent so much time with Coach in that building after the players were gone. And Dave, you were right. Coach did everything. But it wasn't just about football. I watched Coach wash clothes of players that didn't have a washing machine at home to make sure that they were ready for them when they came to school the next day. Can't thank you enough for the gift that you all gave to us. My favorite saying of Coach Kurth was, always take a negative, make it a positive. And although I don't say it that exact same way all the time, hundreds of people have heard me say there's always opportunities in the challenges. And that's what Coach was saying. Every challenge that we face, there's an opportunity there. Because the only way to look at life through Coach Kurth's eyes from a positive perspective. I can't thank him enough for that. Now, I've also got to set this record straight on something with Coach Kurth, because we all are here because we know that he loved Elkhart, Indiana. He had opportunities to leave, but he always said, I couldn't find any place better than here to go. But as much as he loved this place, Coach was from the region, and he will let you know it. So I remember back in 1988, I'm walking up in the locker room. I need to talk to Coach, and I overhear him and Coach Surge and Coach Stilson having a conversation. And Coach he's a little heated. And he's talking about a coach from another school and something he did 15 years ago. And Coach is saying, I'm going to get that son of a gun back. And I chuckle, and I said, Coach, are you still holding a grudge from 15 years ago? Now, granted, we have beat this team every year for the last 15 years. I said, why are you holding a grudge? And he looked me dead in the face. He pointed that finger at me, and he says, because I'm from the region. And just so I understood, 10 years later, I'm coming back. It's my first year back as a assistant coach on the staff. Spent 2 years at Northside Middle School coaching. And as a middle school coach, you had to go scout every Friday night. So I was excited. I was finally going to be on Coach's varsity staff, and I was assistant offensive line coach. And we get towards the end of the season. We're getting ready to play Mishawaka. And Coach calls me into his office, and he says, I'm sending you to go scout. And I'm young, and I'm frustrated because it's Mishawaka, and I want to go watch us beat Mishawaka. And I said, really, Coach? And he says, yes. He says, I'm sending you to God's country. I said, where am I going? He says, you're going to Hobart. Now, I know the team that we were getting ready to play, and like I said, I was sure that we were going to beat them. I was confident we were going to beat them, so I was like, why is he sending me here? And I remember the whole time I'm over there scouting, I'm fuming the whole time because I just want to know what's going on with Elkhart Central and Mishawaka. And I get back home that night. It's late. We get back. I get to go in my little office, and I'm in there, and I'm typing up the best scouting report ever. Everything that the team that we were getting ready to play, I had down on paper. This was going to be the thickest, most thorough scouting report ever. I walk in the next morning, and I hand them this scouting report, and it's got to be 30 pages long. Every play, everything. And Coach looks at it and says, thanks, and throws it on the back table. And we spent the next hour and a half talking about the Bricky Bowl. He said, where'd you sit? I sat on the visitor side. He says, great. He says, you got to see Duck Creek, didn't you? Which is the creek that runs under the visitor stands at the old Bricky Bowl. I said, yep, Coach. How many trains went by during the game? I don't know, 3, 4. Did they blow their whistle? I said, only when the opposing team was on offense. He goes, that's right. But I came back, and it made me think, this is why he loves this place so much. It reminds him of home. It's the river that runs past the stadium. It's the train tracks that go along here. It's why he brought once a Bricky, always a Bricky to Elkhart and has all of us now saying, once a Blazer, always a Blazer. He loved this place. One of the things that Coach loved the most and fought for the most was the shared experiences. The guys from 66 to the guys that in 2 weeks are going to run out of that field house. We've all got a shared experience. Every year this time of the year, I start having football dreams, but here's the deal. Not once do I ever make it to the football field. Not once. I've never had a dream about a football game. My dream starts and ends in that building. And it starts I'm looking up right now. It starts with me and Dan Brecky and Bill Wargo and Brad Greenwald sitting in the middle of that locker room. And across from us are two sophomores that are going to be the future of the linebacking core, Craig Ramsey and Matt Thompson. And around the corner to my left, I can hear Max Yakey slapping people on the shoulders. I can hear Kurth saying, stop. I can hear John Hilton say, hit me again. I can hear Ed Wickert hitting Max back. And there's a couple of sophomores that are over there that are going to be the future of that defensive line, and Chris Caldwell and Clarence Thomas, although he went to the dark side and ended up playing offensive line. Over in the corners, as defensive backs will do, I can see Tyrone Woods and Bill Lee and Jeff Collett and Eric Hintz, and they're over there just having a good time. They're relaxed, just like defensive backs should be. But I'm watching a young guy that's going to be the future of that defensive backfield, Mike Deputy, and he's watching him. And around the corner, there's a room. It's a special room because only one group can go in there. There's no other position that gets to walk into that room, and it's the offensive line. And in that room is Bob Martin and John Babcock, and there's some sophomores in there, one in particular, Barry Caldwell, who are going to be the future. And I start thinking in this dream about the connection of those sophomores and how I'm connected to the next group of sophomores that are going to come after them and so on and so forth. But we're all sitting there and we're all waiting around. We're waiting for that call from Coach to say, come on down. So we go downstairs and we're sitting in that locker room. And Coach Surge gets up and says something about the defense. And we appreciate it, Coach, but we weren't waiting for you to talk. And if you were the offensive coordinator, and I'm sorry, I don't remember who our offensive coordinators were back then because, quite honestly, us defensive guys, it didn't matter. But we were waiting for Coach. And Coach would get up and he would stand in front of all of us. And we're sitting in that locker room. Coach is looking and he's going over the game plan. But you can feel as he's starting to go through the game plan, he's starting to crescendo a little bit. His voice is getting a little louder. And he starts talking about those past generations, just like you just talked about. And he's telling us that, I got a call this week from Rich Wingo. And Rich, I got to be serious. I got to be honest with you. Every time he said that, I was like, bull crap. It's good to know it's true. Sorry, Coach. But he would talk about the tradition, how we were not only representing all those guys that had come before us, but we were going to set the example for all those guys that were going to come after us. And he would continue to crescendo. And then he'd talk about what we were going to do to the opponent. And it was, we were going to kill them. We were going to run them up and down the field. We were going to throw over them. We were going to run around them. We were going to run through them defensively. We were going to shut them down. And then he always finished with this, and this is what you were waiting for. You're sitting there, the room is vibrating, heartbeats are going, you can feel your head's getting ready to explode. And Coach says, who's the best? Oh, and we all know what the answer was. So if you played for Coach, I'm getting ready to say it again. If you played for Coach, you know what the answer is. Please say it. Who's the best? We are. There you go. Oh, who's the best? We are. Who's going to win? We are. Oh, that shared experience. That's where my dream takes me. And just when you're ready to knock down anything, Coach would say, now take a knee. And we'd all get down on a knee, and we'd all grab hands. If there was somebody that was outside the circle, we made sure we were touching their shoulder pads. And then Coach would pray. And in that moment, you could still feel a vibration. You could feel the heartbeat starting to become one. And Coach would pray, and then he would say, and now let us pray the prayer the Lord taught us. And we would all say the Lord's Prayer together. But as we got towards the end of the Lord's Prayer, something began to happen. those shared experiences, those hands holding one another. The grip became tighter. I only held Max Yakey's hand one time because he almost broke mine when we got to amen. And when we said amen, Coach would say, let's go, and we would come busting out those doors. And quite honestly, folks, that dream ends right there every time in a bright light in that moment, in that shared experience with everybody that went through that locker room from 1966 to 1988 to 2001. It's the shared experiences of the guys that are on the wall in there. I often thought the guys on the wall, the pictures on the wall, if you've not been in the field house, they're all at the top of the stairs now. They used to be in his office. I thought he put those there for inspiration, for guys to try to achieve to be on the wall. What I found out as a coach is it really wasn't about that at all. It was a teaching tool. Because on that wall is somebody that represents every one of us. Something we're going through, an experience we had. Even though Coach may not have experienced it himself, he knew somebody that he had a relationship with. And he would share those experiences. He would pull guys up and he said, that guy right there went through the same thing you're going through. He made it. There were times he had to look at that wall and say, that guy right there was going through the same thing you're going through. And he didn't make the best decisions. You make a better decision. I'm thankful for those shared experiences. It's those shared experiences that ties me to these guys that I've never played with. Not one up here have I ever stepped on the field with, but I consider them each one of them brothers. I consider them brothers in Blue Blazers, consider them brothers in Coach Kurth. And we know that his memory, his legend, it's not going anywhere because it's been passed down through us. And it's been passed down through our kids. And it'll keep being passed down. Two weeks ago, I had a chance to talk to Coach Kurth. We talked about a lot of things. Talked about his family. Talked about my family. 3 of my kids, when they were young, Mrs. Kurth used to babysit them, and Coach would come home and play with them, and had conversations about that. Talked about my youngest son and his senior season, and then he wanted to talk about Elkhart football. And when I started thinking about those grudges that Coach used to have, it made me laugh because he had 2 special grudges. He had a grudge for whoever came up with the cluster system, which he happily helped defeat and get rid of after 2 years. And he had a grudge for the person that broke up Elkhart High School. I can't tell you how excited he was to see Elkhart High School. I look at that sign on the building over there. It doesn't say Elkhart Central. It doesn't say Elkhart Memorial. It just says Elkhart High School. He fought for that. For those that listened, heard him, helped bring it back, thank you. Thank you for Coach. Thank you for the city. This last part I wrote down. It has been said that the greatest purpose and triumph of leadership is inspiring and developing future leaders. As I look into these stands, reflect on this community, and think about where coaches, guys, and gals are across this country, whether they are leading communities, businesses, teams, organizations, churches, in education, or most importantly to him, their families. His legacy of purpose has been fulfilled. Rest easy, Coach. Mission accomplished.
We have a 97 grad, quarterback for the Blazers, Darrell Higgins.
Thank you. In August of '84, my family moved to Elkhart, and one of the first things we did, we came here to watch the Central Memorial game. At that moment, I had no clue who Coach was, and no clue the impact that he would have on my life. The only thing I knew is when the players ran out in the field, the band played the fight song, the stands erupted, and I said, I want that experience. I want to know what that's like. And I didn't know, but as a 6-year-old, I knew that's what I wanted. And over the years, we continued to come to the games, and I got to cheer on the people that I later would call my friends, my brothers. I got to watch Dave Schnell and Levon Johnson play, and then I later got to coach with, they were my coaches, and then I got to coach with them, and I got to coach their kids. I got to watch Mike Nolan and Kendrick Jordan play, and then I later got to coach with them and coach their kids. LeVar Johnson was my quarterback coach. Later on, I got to coach with him, and he became one of my best friends. Bill Urlacher was one of my coaches also. Later on, I got to coach with him and his son, Matt. Coaches, his impact spreads generations, and those generations were always taught to take care of each other, to look out for each other, because that's what's important. He modeled that to us. He taught us the importance of our brotherhood. As my wife and I, we raise our daughters in this community, I know that there's numerous Blazers that are watching out for my girls and taking care of them. I first met Coach at the end of my 8th grade year at a track meet here. And he said, Daryl, do you have a football? I said, no. He goes, all quarterbacks need a football. And he made sure that LeVar got me a football. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. I just met this guy, and he gave me a football? Only my dad had only done that. And I thought, man, all he does is take care of us. He constantly takes care of all of us. And as my girls are involved in sports, and I feel like I'm constantly buying them new shoes, new basketball, volleyball, track. And I think back to when I played, when I was in high school, my parents never had to buy anything for me. They didn't have to buy me my football cleats and my track spikes because Coach gave those to us. He took care of us. Then I sit back and I think, from the age of 14 to 42, if it was an interception that I threw or some dumb life choice I made, Coach never hesitated to say, Daryl, you can't do that. You can't be like everyone else. You got to be different. And I thought, golly, Coach. He's like, no, I don't want you to be just an average person, just another person. I want you to be great. I want you to be a great man, a great member of the community. I want you to be a great husband, a great father. He wanted us to be great, just like him. And then I think, at the end of my freshman year, going into my sophomore year, after summer practices, my parents are waiting in the parking lot to take me home. And I walk out there to get in the car, and Coach said, no, not anymore. He goes, I'm taking him home. It's on my way. Don't worry about that. And I thought, man, what's Coach trying to make sure he keeps an eye on me, knows where I'm at all the time, want to make sure I got my lift in, wanted to teach me about Neil Diamond. I don't know who Neil Diamond is. But I look now, I think about it, and I was like, and he wanted to get to know me. He wanted to get to know who I was outside of the sport. We talked so many different things, and there was rarely about football or track. It was about family, life, girlfriends, school. He wanted to know who we were. And then he wanted to teach me to be a leader. And then when I became old enough to drive, he made sure that if any of our teammates needed a ride, he said, Daryl, get him here. Take him home. Take care of him. He taught us to do that, to take care of our teammates and our brothers, because it's the right thing to do. Even until weeks ago, Coach and I still had those conversations. He wanted to know how my wife and my girls are doing. He wanted to know how my parents and my sister are doing. We still talk football. I got to hear a lot of the old stories. Some were new to me, and some I heard many, many times. But I didn't care. It was just Coach and I talking. Frank, I told you many times, he's your dad, but we love him like a second dad. Christy, Steve, Frank, Denise, Karen, Bill, Tommy, Katie, Dean, Kurt, Justin, Mrs. Kurth, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. You shared Coach with us. He was a husband, a father, a grandfather, but he treated us like we were his, and we loved him like he was ours.
I have a few words to close the ceremony with. I apologize if I'm having a tough time getting through it. My wife helped me with this because she seems to be, sometimes I tend to be, kind of non-emotional, if you can believe that. I guess it all depends how you define that. But as I look at all of you gathered here tonight, we are all here for the same reason. At some point in our life, Coach Tom Kurth reached out and touched each and every one of us. He helped make us the men and women that we are today. Tom, you will live on in all of us gathered here tonight. Tom, we love you, and we will miss you. And always remember the common thread that binds all of us together forever. Once a Blazer, always a Blazer. And I've used that probably every day that I've been principal. I have been fortunate to be principal here at Elkhart Central. We have to sum the session up. We have a audio clip from Coach Kurth that we would like to play at this time. Hopefully, if everything goes well. Please.
Number one is this. Listen to me when I say this. Elkhart is number one. And the next thing is even more important. When I say we are, you say Elkhart. And let's really hear it. Are you ready? Are you ready? One more time, are you ready? Let's let him hear it over at Pitt. Let's just shout it out all the way. Here we go. We are. We are. We are. You bet we are. We're number one. Thank you, everybody.
On behalf of the family, the Kurths, all our speakers tonight, I thank you very much for coming out tonight. You made a difference for everybody here for showing up. Tom has made a difference for all of us in our lives. It was funny. We started out, he was my boss, then I was his boss, but I never felt like I was his boss. So thank you, everybody. Thank you from all of us. Once a Blazer, always a Blazer.